you go. You're on.
So I'm going to, if with your permission, I'll just act as a temporary facilitator here, but I think the first thing we need to do is select a chair for this committee and perhaps a vice chair. And do we want to take notes, or is this sufficient, having this on the record the way we are, available on the website? It's laborious to take notes when you have a recording. I'm not sure that
It's up to you.
we have to do that, but I would put out there that we select a chair first, and I nominate Mike Thayer.
Thanks, Bob, I appreciate that. I was gonna go work on my new house.
Second that.
Is that a second? Any other nominations? I don't hear anybody saying he won't do it, so I guess the vote is all in favor. It's your meeting.
And for the record, I would like to hear what the official charge is to this committee. What is our
My
job?
understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that our charge is to figure out whether it's in the interest of the town to sell the assets of the water department.
And I'll add a slight qualification to that. And if the town decides to do it, to whom and how it's
Right.
done.
Thank you.
And any other things the select board assigns.
Within the parameters
Sounds
of
like an
this
FBI
committee's-
investigation.
It's complicated.
Pardon me?
To the,
To
To
whom,
determine who buys it
if so?
and the mechanism by which it's sold.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And quite frankly, when I learned the other day that we have an open-ended contract with Maine Water with no drop-dead date, no end date, I found that astonishing.
And it's never been. So here's what happened, from what I can tell. Lee Smith and the committee worked really hard to get it done. And then soon thereafter it was done, Lee left.
I don't know Lee, so.
Well, he was a longtime town manager who was very thorough and really good at doing this type of stuff.
Okay.
And then he left, and it just seems like no one, because of the turnover, no one even paid attention, kind of, after he left, as from the seat that I sit in now, from a town management seat. And then you have turnover on select board and select boards that they don't know what they don't know. So how this came all about was Abden asks the question at a meeting because of a personal experience, why is this like this? So then I delve into it, and then we make a trip down to Scarborough to say, what's up? And then, you know, I'm only a year into the job, and I'm like, what do you mean? We have $8,000 left. What do you mean we need a rate increase? What are we doing? And that's kind of what started this. And then I got worried because having had the responsibility of water and sewer utility in my prior lives, it's serious business. You can kill people with water. That bothers me. And then just kind of turning it over to an entity that we don't really see or hear of except when we're doing construction. You know, they send reports, but I wasn't getting those reports. They were going to the finance director. So we've worked out that internal thing, but that all kind of freaked me out. And then I make the bold statement, we shouldn't be in the water business. I understand why we were, and there was many reasons to do it, but now I'm a little scared because you can kill people with water.
That's right.
And that liability freaks me out a little bit. And so I either want I'm one of those control freaks. Either I want control and I want to know what I'm doing and what I'm dealing with, or I don't want to be responsible. So that's where I was at.
Delia has some interesting, well, you
She's-
were
yeah, she was on the
involved
committee.
in the, when this happened.
As Julie says, there were a lot of reasons why
Yeah,
it
a
happened
lot.
the way it did.
Can you, none
I
of
can
us,
give you some
I know
background.
Abbott was
Yeah,
here.
give us
but none of
background.
us
I
were
think
here.
it's a great
Abbott's
idea.
lived in town longer than I have, but I was on the select
I
board.
would appreciate some history.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, when I moved here to town in 1987, I was drinking water from the quarry hole on Quarry Hill.
You were?
Paul Ring was operating the Waldeboro Water Company. It was a private entity. And every spring, it was very interesting what would come out of the faucets. And then we realized through the fire department that we didn't even have much for pressure. So fire insurance became a huge deal. If you don't have the specs on your hydrants, the insurance companies will not insure you. Or they will insure you for this much money. And we couldn't be sure of the quality, we couldn't be sure of the pressure, we couldn't be sure of the maintenance. There were a lot of reasons why we were really in crisis, and it had to be dealt with. So it was a contentious time. It was not easy to make the decisions the town had to make, but eventually it was determined it had to be under the town's control. And we had to go through some legal efforts to get the water company and then to upgrade it. At that time, Maine Aqua was very interested in owning it. They still are. Now they're Maine Water Company. But they were willing to work with us, and at that time, as I recall, and I have spoken to Carlton Johnson at some length last night, who was the man who made the presentations to the voters about what are our options here, how much will this cost, how much will this cost, what are the benefits, what are the problems. It was determined that the town had access through federal grant monies to some money that would help us at that time, that Maine Water Company did not have access to as a private entity. So that was one of the issues we were juggling. The biggest issue, though, is what is it going to cost the ratepayers? And I use the word the ratepayers, knowing that that is not everybody who receives town water in their tap. However, everybody who pays taxes in town has an interest in this, because part of it services our town office, our schools downtown, our center of town. Everybody helps pay for that through the hydrants. When you have a private water company, they are allowed by PUC law to make a profit. That makes sense. If they're making an investment, they want to make a profit. They are allowed a 6% profit. If they invest money, they're allowed to recoup that money plus. That's built in. That's non-negotiable. The town does not have to make a profit. If we invest that money, we pay back that money through our ratepayers and some amount of loan interest. Hopefully not 6%. At the time that we were doing this, it made sense for the town to do it, rather than the water company through cost. So that is still the case. The PUC is still running the show in terms of water in the state of Maine. Water companies are still allowed, I don't know if it's 6, it may have gone up, a percentage on their investment. The town is not required to do that. So my big concern would be, let's think about the rate base. Let's think about the fact that we've done a lot of work on this water system. It's not that old. In terms of liability for having things fail, I'm not sure I'm convinced that's a real problem. We're not Flint, Michigan. Yes, it's important. I, as a tap owner, get the statements every year about, all those percentages of all the little things that are in my water. We're doing fine. That well is only 15 years old out there. It's in good shape. I think Julie's point is well taken, that it sort of fell off the radar. Now it's back on the radar, and I would love to talk with Rick Knowlton about a capital improvement plan. What would we need going forward? Are there infrastructure issues in town? Where are they? How urgent are they? Can it be done piecemeal? What would you prioritize? How is the well doing? As far as I know from what I receive as a user, as a ratepayer, it looks good. So in terms of the background and the history, it made really good sense back then, and I'm not convinced that it makes really good sense now to make an ownership change. Definitely, we need to have an infrastructure plan. We need to know what the costs of that plan might be and how we can spread it out. The rate base will pay more if we sell this to a for-profit
Regardless of
entity.
capital
Regardless
improvements.
of capital improvements. Those capital improvements have to be paid for, no matter if we, the town, does it, or they, the private company, does it. But they are allowed to make a profit, and they will. You can be sure of it. And so that's a bottom line that you can't avoid. The other thing is, they have been good to work with. Back in the day, when we were talking with them, they were very clear, they were forthcoming. They've always given us information as we've asked for it. Admittedly, we haven't been.
No, they're great. I have no.
Yeah, and
they're
they
great.
know what they're doing. We, as a town, really can't do this. We don't have the knowledge, we don't have the equipment. Who's gonna get up at 1 a.m. to solve a big problem? The water company does. That's their job, and they do it. So I'm pretty happy with the water company in terms of their professionalism. They've always been a class act. They've always been forthcoming. I'm happy with the way they're running things, and I know what it could be because I was here when it was. Carlton Johnson, who made the presentation to the voters and really knows this more than I do, said he'd be glad to come as a presenter if the committee wants more information. He'd be glad to be a member of the committee, whatever works in terms of making sure the committee has the information, the select board has the information they need, the town manager does, and the townspeople do, because ultimately it will need to go to the townspeople for a decision. So he's available. He mentioned, he's the one who told me Mark Benoit is no longer on the PUC and would be a possible resource. Whether you can get that resource in the door is another issue, but,
I want people that are actually interested in it. I guess that was my comment about that, just that, you know, if, we have had no luck with him in the past, getting him to
so
participate.
that in a nutshell is what I remember. As I say, I'm not the one who was the point on that, but at the time, it was a huge relief to have water we could trust, to know that somebody was managing it in a way that was abiding by every rule known to local, state, and federal government. One of my concerns is also that they are owned out of country. They are not owned in the US, is
Maine
my
Water?
understanding. So, like Julie, I like local control. However, I'm happy to let somebody manage it, as long as I can own it and look at the information and
I
be
just
in
need
charge.
really good insurance for it, that's.
There would be another thing one could do. One could ask the Maine Municipal Association or whoever at the state level keeps documents, and I'm sure it's documented. How, in general, are water companies doing in the state of Maine? Is there an uptick in liability concerns?
My concern is we've ignored that liability.
That
We
can
never,
be
we
fixed.
haven't, right. And well,
Without
it is
change in
now,
ownership.
that's part of our
Right.
increase in our
I don't
insurance
think a
this year.
change- I don't think a change in ownership is required to be more
No,
on the
but I
job.
do think that that's part of, and this is what happened is, it shouldn't take 13 years for us to go there. And then we're faced with a 33% increase. And you can't expect 5 elected officials to know what they don't know. It's, and when you have that much turnover, and that can happen again, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're always gonna have turnover. It's gotta belong to somebody. Somebody's gotta take true ownership of it and say, okay, but I think we have to have the exercise.
I'm wondering if it might behoove, I certainly think we ought to ask Carlton to come and talk to us But I'm wondering if now that Mark is no longer involved with the PUC, I know I've tried to contact him in the past when he was in that position, and he did ignore me, but I kind of felt it because he was in that position. It's a really sensitive position to be in, and perception is often something you don't want to encourage among people. The perception he probably wanted to avoid was that he was favoring or getting involved in
Get
local
that,
stuff.
but just say no, that was my point.
I agree, but he didn't even answer me, and I didn't take it personally, or
I don't,
otherwise.
let me be very clear, because we're on tape.
Yeah.
I did not take it personally
Okay.
that he did not answer me, but I believe that as a public servant, which he was, it is incumbent upon a public servant to answer when you have a request. I do believe that. I'm held to that standard. Every public servant should be held to that standard. So that was strictly my concern, was that it hasn't been a good communication in the past. That's all.
To address something you just mentioned, and this ties into what you said, the system that we have now, the water system that we have right now, is very robust. If we were taking surface water supplies, like the quarry, that's subject to contamination from sewage, contamination for birds. Lots of things can go wrong with a public water supply that takes surface water. But this is a well, it's a deep well system. In terms of, liability for killing people, we're not going to get cryptosporidium, we're not going to get giardia.
It makes me feel better.
We're not going to get those sorts of spread of disease type issues that a lot of surface water supplies have.
Why you're so positive about that? What makes you so sure that we wouldn't, for example, get Giardia or even amoeba or anything else like that in the system?
Soil acts as a filter.
Okay.
It's a depth filter.
Yep.
Surface water, you get pleasure boats driving and
You're not gonna have
there are a
salt
lot of-
intrusion.
Yeah, there's not a lot of things.
Okay.
The other things, originally, from what I understand, and I have limited knowledge of this, but the quarry had a uranium problem too, and there are potential chemical issues, but they happen very slowly. If there's any change, that happens very slowly, and we already have sampling and
testing in place.
a sampling and analysis program in place.
We do have a uranium problem too.
But then there are ion exchange resins.
Right.
Yeah, the pump
Right,
station.
and in that report, it says what we're gonna have to do in the future and
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But I can
I see some other things
Yeah.
that are necessary. I've heard from at least one resident that says the water pressure isn't very good at her residence.
I can't keep
Depends
a
where
garden
you are.
hose at my house.
Yeah.
It blows it out.
And
Depends
there's,
where you
much.
are.
I
You've
get
got so much?
I get so much, I get like over 120 pounds of pressure.
80 Gray,
It
that
blows my
area
hoses
up there
out. I
is
can't have a hose
tough
for 2 or 3 days.
for pressure, we've heard.
I have to have
I know,
special
You
hoses.
need a regulator
Those
on
aren't-
it just to get in there.
Yeah.
those issues are easy to correct. You put in a pressure regulating valve. I mean, it's for a 1-inch pressure regulating valve, we're talking about, $50 down at Home Depot. On the other hand, raising the pressure in other parts of the system, that's a more difficult problem. You may need a standpipe somewhere else in town, and that's a capital investment. So,
I can
Alright.
understand where Julie's coming from as a manager,
yeah.
given all the cats she's having to herd. And I
Julie,
use that
Queen of
advisedly.
Cats, mother of cats.
It's an imposition in a way to have that additional responsibility on your list of things on your checklist that you have to do. I do sympathize with that.
Well, that's why you contract it. I mean,
Right.
And watch your.
but the
contract.
issue is contracting the operations versus ownership.
Yeah.
That's
No,
what
I
we're
get
talking
it.
about. We're not gonna hire, and I said this to the folks at the Waldoboro Utility District, you don't go down to the unemployment office and hire a wastewater operator or a water operator. It's a specialized
It's a
field.
license.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to get the impression that in any way I'm unhappy with Maine Water. I think they've done a great job and they've done what they were contracted to do. It's us, it's on us. This is totally on us.
Just a clarification, we have the well, the quarry, what,
The quarry is no longer being used as a
it's
water
done, it's
supply.
just being monitored so it doesn't leak or
We're not
what-
using it as a water
Not
supply.
using-
People
okay.
just swim in it now.
And
And
fish in
fish,
it.
and
All
fish in
right,
it.
okay. The pending merger of the Connecticut Water Service and the SJW Group, is that gonna have any effect on anything?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The Maine Water Company files a new application for reorganization with the Maine Public Utility Commission for approval of the proposed merger of its parent company, Connecticut Water Service, with SJW.
Didn't that happen last year?
Yeah, he mentioned that during the meeting.
Yeah, he
And
mentioned
we
it.
asked specifically
Because
whether
this
they
is
had.
dated May 3, 2019.
You know, it was coming. We knew that was coming.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still staying Maine Water. It's just a division,
Just
is
a
what he
division.
explained
They've
at the meeting.
changed their name several times since I came to town. It's, these utilities are always being
Okay.
bought and sold. It's another reason to own them, in my view.
And we did ask if they would entertain representation on their board, which they refused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just interested to see if there was gonna be any problem with that. Okay.
So Abden, if we could deal with having a problem-solving session so that we can prioritize problems in town and get a capital plan in place, would you feel a lot better about the state of the system if you could have your
I
concern
didn't want to
addressed?
sell it anyways.
He didn't want, yeah, he's
I
a,
don't want to sell it,
I don't wanna sell it either,
Beca-
but,
just because of the rate increase. You know, I got multiple houses, I mean, especially, you know, neighbors and everything. And I know it's gonna affect me, so it's gonna affect everybody, so.
but you would be happier knowing that your issue is on somebody's to-do list, probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
well, his initial issue was the cost of,
Right.
one of our issues we had, and I think this is where it gets a slippery slope. You know, he calls me up and says, "Do you realize how much this is going to cost?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And you know, when I find out there's 3 contractors they use, you know, each project isn't specifically bid. They're not. I have to follow public purchasing. If I own it, they should too. But yet they had 3 contractors, and it's amazing how those 3 contractors come in every time. If you're guaranteed work,
Good point.
you're guaranteed work. So I think there's things in it that we'd have to rework because it shouldn't cost 20 grand for him to put in a water line. I don't care if it's commercial or not. That should not be the cost to dig up the road. That's insane. And they're paying contractor prices, and they know they have the contractors know they have this. So I mean, I think that's part of what our issues. That's what started. If
Yeah,
I'm
that's
speaking
what I
for your,
said.
okay, yes.
Well,
Which was good because that opened up this whole, because then of course I go and I find this contract and I'm thinking, well, there's gotta be a contract since it was originally done. Well, no, there isn't.
Well, there is, this agreement shall remain in effect for 2, parentheses, number 2, years from the effective date, and may be extended for additional terms as mutually agreed upon.
Right.
So.
But we never
it
did that.
is- Right,
Right.
but it is okay to do that now.
Right, it is.
We can rework this now,
Right.
and I'm sure they would be willing.
But it's just, that's kind of what set it off. And yeah, he's always been, I mean, yeah, we're on opposite sides of this one.
If for some reason, the selling of the assets, would there be any leeway, or would you put that in the proposal of the kind of a step-up rate increase
Well, that's
rather
what
than?
my plan was instead of 33% is do like 7% for the next 4 years or 5 years to get them to that and then look at it again.
We
And
incorporated
you
that
probably
into the
could do
budget.
that,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you take a
Well,
33%
that's what- yeah,
increase,
the budget
people are
was
gonna freak
considered
out.
that.
absolutely.
Does Maine Water, do they have a capital improvement plan for this town? It's in here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see one for the water. I see one
There's
for
the
the
Waldeboro
wastewater.
Utility District, that's
Oh,
us, yeah.
That's
Bob,
the utility
That's
district.
what you put out.
Is that
Yes,
what
we
I sent
have a
you?
water
Yes,
one.
this is what you
I
sent me. I didn't
apologize.
see
We
it
have
with
a big,
water.
thick
There is
water
a-
one.
There is a big,
Okay,
Yeah.
so there is
I'll
one.
email it to everybody.
Like-
Yeah, they did that. We spent last year with an engineering company to prepare that. And actually, it looked good. I mean, the system is in very good shape.
Yes, it is, because it's not that old.
It's really not that old.
Does that mean there aren't improvements could be made? No, we're not
Right.
going there. There are improvements
There
that
could be
made.
improvements, but no, like I said, Maine Water's done what they're supposed to do. We haven't done what we're supposed to do. You know, and maybe the secret to this is having the same arrangement, but maybe the utility district who deals with this all the time, which is what I felt probably better about than selling it, would be turning the responsibility over to the water district, the sewer district that already has the infrastructure to do the billing and have the intelligent people sitting on there.
That's not quite true. We get billing information from Maine Water. That's how we develop our invoices for sewer services.
Well, but you do the billing.
We do billing, yes.
Right.
We do billing, but
Right.
we
But
don't
the
have
billing is a
anybody
small
read the
part of
meters.
this.
They read the meters.
Yeah.
Right,
Maine
but
Water reads them.
I just felt that then you have a dedicated professional in whoever is in the John Fancy position, that when he gets the reports and things like that, they understand it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I can get all the reports, the financial stuff I get,
Yeah.
and I understand that. But when it comes to deciphering some of the engineering and other things like that, that's not my thing.
well, that's something we want to look at then, isn't it? Possibility of you guys taking it over, but not buying it.
Well,
You don't have to have them take it over in terms of.
Administratively and
You can
operationally.
you can have a relationship, you can design whatever relationship you want that will give you the information and the oversight that you need.
Right.
you know.
And it'd be nice if
ownership-
they would take the debt. too. From
They're
a
raising
purely
You know-
financial,
I'm
from a
sure.
purely financial, because then all the grants and everything, then there's no payback. But then it's, again, that's their specific thing. It's not a select board that's worried about this. It's a utility board that's worried about this. And it's much more manageable, in my perspective, from that angle than,
And can we insulate the town if we use that structure for insurance purposes? That's something I can't answer.
I've only gotten my feet wet at the Waldeboro Utility District for a
Okay.
year and a half or so.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for me to say. I will say that the utility district is in good financial shape. And what's more is, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, the facilities are 15 years old, maybe not the pipes in the street, the standpipe, but the well and the pump station, those bonds are almost paid, I believe. So,
We're in good shape.
good shape, yeah, and from my perspective, and I'm only speaking as a junior member of the utility district, I wouldn't mind taking on the debt service payments, but it hasn't been voted on by the board. But I would not object to that.
And Maine Municipal can be a resource to you, Julie, in terms of how is this done in other towns? We might not have to reinvent the wheel in terms of.
oh, I never thought we would have to, yeah.
In terms of finding out what are our options.
That was the whole, the whole reason we're sitting here today is because I don't wanna reinvent the wheel. If I'm at the wheel, I'd like to know what I'm dealing with, that's all.
Is the customer base virtually the same?
It is.
There's a lot of overlap, but it's
No.
not necessarily.
One.
Moody's Diner has its own water well.
Right, they do.
You know, so.
Sylvania, I will say too, in terms of history, Sylvania going under made a big difference in terms of the rate. Do you remember that, Abden? Sylvania paid a lot of money every year for the water they were using. And when that went away, like in big cities, when a big user goes away, well, guess who has to pay? The rest of us have to pay for that. So that made a difference in terms of finances, unfortunately. But it is what it is, and I don't see a lot of growth poised for Waldeboro in terms of our needing to all of a sudden build a lot of infrastructure to deal with a new, God willing, wouldn't we love to have that kind of a problem in a way? So we're not going to need to have explosive growth, so what we've got is probably what we've got, and if much of it is in good shape, that's to our credit. If we were to sell to Maine Water Company, now we're part of an 8-town, and we would be sharing the costs for theirs.
That's what he explained the night he was here.
They have, it's in here, Rockport, Camden, Rockland,
Right.
Thomaston, Owl's Head, Union, and Warren, and you add Waldeboro in there, and now all of a sudden our 15-year-old system is being asked to pay for older systems. So that's another reason why I'm not sure the rate base would be real happy with taking on even
Well, according to
a
their
bigger.
presentation, ours would probably drop a little bit, wasn't it?
I think they said
Only
that,
until they
yeah.
need something done in the other towns. So anyway, there's a lot to think about, for sure.
Definitely. But before I think the select board makes a decision, that has to be hashed out, which is why we're here, which is a good thing.
We built a publicly owned, privately operated facility in Lawrence, Massachusetts. It was actually the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. And the facility was built in North Andover. And North Andover thought that they were going to get a big hit to their rate base, their tax revenue. Turns out that wasn't the case because the facility was publicly owned and privately operated.
So
Would
they didn't
this
get it
add to the
plus.
town's tax base would they be taxed either on property or real estate? Would Maine Water or the subsequent
If we-
owner, would they be taxed on the property?
Yes, they would pay taxes, and then there would be there'd also be the, what's that other tax? They get taxed on the property and then the equipment tax.
Which they are allowed to recoup.
That's what you made the point about
Right.
the profit, but then there's more,
Right.
they'll have a tax assessment that gets added to their rate base as well.
They said it was
Correct.
70,000 a
We're
year or
paying for
something
their
like that.
taxes.
Right.
Be clear
I think
about
it was
that.
68 or 70,000 is what they predicted taxes would be.
Right.
And we will be paying for that. There's no free lunch here.
But
Never
again,
is.
again,
That's how cheap
again,
it is.
the ratepayers would. The town would pay some too, but that's the other argument is, there is, although we do get water and sewer at the town buildings and the schools have it, there are people who feel that money that we put in the budget to pay for the water and the hydrants is excessive. So, I mean, you have, you know,
You will always have some who say that.
Right.
Do you want a town or not? If you want a town, that's part of
I-
having a town.
I completely grasp what you're saying. I'm just saying what I hear from the other side.
Yep, have heard
I
for
should
years.
make this, I'm gonna start doing this in every committee I sit on now. Opinions expressed by Julie are anecdotal at times. Sometimes they are not my opinion, they are just what I hear, and I'm giving you insight into what I hear when people walk into my office. When it is my personal opinion, I will say, it's my personal opinion. But yeah, it is, it's a complicated matter, it is, it's never easy.
One of the questions I had when I came to town was, so where are the old dumps in town? Because every town has an old dump. I wanted to know, where is it? Well, it turns out it's on Old Route 1,
Yeah.
just across
I
the
remember when
railroad
that was
tracks,
open.
down in
I
there.
remember when that was still open.
You weren't here? That's not near our well. It's not
Oh, no,
near,
it's-
no.
Yeah.
It's
So
in
that
our-
was a concern of mine.
It's
The
in
other
a
thing
great
is,
location as far
where
as
are
contamination
there
is concerned.
places of contamination?
Yeah.
Turns out Sylvania is a place of concern. Turns out maybe the old felt factory might be a place of concern. There might be others that I don't know about in town. However, as far as I've been able to tell, and this is strictly anecdotal, none of them are near our water source. So in
Correct.
terms of liability, that was another question I had when we were doing the well, but Maine Water knows their business, and they did extensive testing, and that was the final site. It wasn't the only site that was considered. There were other sites considered in town. So homework has been done, is another reason why I feel like these people are pros. They really know what they're doing in terms of local, state, and federal regulations. And I sleep better at night because I was on the select board, making this decision on behalf of all of my fellow ratepayers and people drinking the water. And I felt good about it then, and I still feel good about it.
Do you want to
Knowing
come back?
somebody's doing it.
I'm in.
Yeah, because I gotta look my neighbors in the eye. We all have to look our neighbors in the eye and say, yes,
Boy,
it's
oh
safe.
boy.
Just to get my arms around the potential infrastructure needs, I'd like to see that, that report that Maine Water had.
I'll
You said it
email it
was
to you.
this-
And
Oh, it's
are
a
there
good one. Let me
specs?
go.
Are
yeah,
there-
let
is
me
it
go
a
get one.
Is it on PDF?
if it's
It
on
is on
PDF,
PDF,
I
yeah.
mean, we
But
should
let
all
me-
have a chance to
We
look
should,
at it.
yeah. She said she'll send it to us.
Yeah.
I will, but I have hard copies.
And I'd like to see the pump station specs, because I think what you raised the issue of how good is the water quality. I'd like to be able to look and see what the
I would
specs
bet you
are.
Rick would give you a tour. We had a tour when it was first opened up here off of Cross Street. It's a
I
small
walked
building.
the site even before I got on the utility
Yeah,
district.
yeah, and he'd be happy, I'm
Yeah.
sure, to give a tour to the committee, for
Yeah.
that matter, to talk about what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't make a bit of sense to me because I don't know pumps, but it would to you.
Mhm.
I just was concerned, does it meet regulations? Is this gonna do the job it's gonna do? And they assured me it would, and it has. But I'm sure they would be glad to show you whatever you'd
I would like
to
to see what we got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the standpipe,
You probably don't wanna dig up the roads. You maybe don't wanna know what's underneath those roads, though.
well, you know,
Or maybe you do.
even old cast iron pipes, they'll last 150 years, you know. You know.
When I spoke to Carlton, he said he thinks he remembers that at the time when we did this, there was some talk of future issues to be addressed. I don't know if those were documented, but if there's a new system, I'm sure they're in there. He mentioned something about there were loops that should be done. Now, I don't know whether
Yeah,
anybody
it's-
has received feedback in town about, how come you never did our neighborhood? I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, those are fire protection loops. They,
Fire protection loops? Okay.
Yeah. If you want adequate fire protection, you want to be able to have hydrants filled from two ends. So
Okay,
that if
so
one line
maybe-
goes down because of a break, your fire department still has an alternate source of water.
So that would be a question that I would have, is that need for loops documented in this master plan? And how soon does that need to be done? Because fire protection is a serious business,
Yeah.
like drinking water is a serious
That's right.
business. So that's certainly something that I would think might get a little asterisk on the plan. I love having a long-range plan. Whether or not you get to do it, at least you've got kind of a shopping list, and then you can prioritize it.
Tanya will email it to all of you, and she's going to look on the magic wall for it.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just looking at the letter that he wrote to you. This was an email he wrote back on March 8th, talking about the sale of the water system assets. He put his neck out and said between 1.3 and $1.5 million, with debt of 1.2 million, so. They pay taxes to the town of about $55,000 a year if they bought it. We would eliminate the internal costs of water utility audit and management, and we'd lose the annual transfer of about $10,000 in cost reimbursement. Those are the highlights of his very, very back of the envelope proposal regarding a sale. And-
Did they come to us unsolicited with this proposal?
No, it was me, my total fault.
Okay, no, it's,
That's not,
We
Well,
were
no, it's
we
good
were
to ask
having a
questions.
discussion.
It wasn't really your fault.
no, it's good information.
When we had the meeting with them,
It makes sense
she
to look
she
at
asked
this.
if
Right.
if they had thought about it, and And they said, absolutely. They were excited as could be to-
Right.
to
Of
possibly.
course they would be.
Well, because
He's always been excited.
they're
about it.
sitting there and they're giving us this doom and gloom on one hand, and I'm just like,
Yeah, it was, we got like less than $4,000 in the account.
Right, so that's not good.
and that's our fault. And it
right,
just, it
yeah.
was over. I'm going to tell you, of all the things that I have to do in the next 5 years, it's like, do I really want to take this and it's a scary, I get the killing people. Yes, I know. I worry more being from New Jersey in the hotbed of 9/11. After that, we locked up everything. You couldn't get in our firehouse. You couldn't get in our town hall. You couldn't get anywhere near any of our water. I mean, our water towers were locked up. You couldn't even get in there without getting zapped. You know, so those are my, that's, I think,
Yeah.
where some of my fear comes. Like Bob wanted to see this was
Remember?
good. Bob
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to
a good
see where
story.
the pump station was. So we go up there and we set the alarm off, and we have no idea how to turn it off. And there's alarms and armed officers, and you know, woo! So that gave me a little level, like we're actually protected, you know, to some
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
And then the water department called and said, somebody tried to break in. I'm like, that would be me. I didn't do it purposefully, but they had changed the code and didn't let John Daigle know, so we were kind of funny. But no, they're great to work with, and I'll tell you, they've had a lot of turnover. Since I've been here, the foreman left and a new person took over who was great, just as good as the old foreman, actually trained by the old foreman, which is wonderful. And Helen is new, and she's the engineer who designs everything, and she's a dream to work with. Really good, you know. And now Rick is, you know, they understand. And they made it a point when we went down there to say, nobody's ever come. This is great. They were actually glad we were there, I think. So, you know,
Now, this is
and
run
they're
out of
fine.
the DPW, we do our own excavation and things like that, is that? Okay.
Sometimes,
No,
yes,
they do it all. Main Water does it.
but it's sometimes, I have seen town crews
Helping, we
Yeah,
do.
okay.
We have a good,
It depends.
we have a good working
Okay.
relationship with them.
Yeah, if they're off doing other projects.
If it's an equipment haul from Saco versus an equipment haul from over here on, it makes sense for us to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, you know, this was not an easy and I hate to keep picking on you, Abden, but one of the things that we discovered was, you know, there was a water line running right through his property.
Yeah, which they had no clue was there.
To another house.
It's not possible. I says, it's a freaking running across my lawn. I says, the ground's 2 feet higher than it should be.
Those records have to exist somewhere where those
Yeah,
water mains
it's
are.
not possible, there's no
No,
way.
it wasn't. That
Well,
was
I says,
another
it's
one.
there. They come out and they test it, sure enough.
It was the guy's house behind him.
The guy's house behind me. They,
What
they had no clue it was there.
well, again, you know, pre-2005.
Paul Rink.
Things were done,
Oh, that line's been there forever,
Mm-hmm.
forever. It was all still cast iron.
It
pipe.
wasn't being used though, was it?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
it was. Yeah, it was somebody's house water.
Yep. Yep.
But now we know. You know,
That
and
explains why they glow in the dark.
that's why I have a glow. I
It goes
lived a
around my
mile from a
building now.
nuclear power plant.
Put it on through my building.
so they rerouted it.
Yeah, they
Okay.
put it around my
And
foundation.
now it's documented, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's sleeved.
You know, in this day of GPS too, I'm sure that things are documented differently, so that,
I can GPS now all our beaver dams, so we're good. I
Now,
know
if we
where
can
every
only
beaver
get
and
a map of the water
Waldeboro
mains,
is.
that would be great.
there we go.
List of names, family members.
Got it all.
$4,000 balance that they have,
Mhm.
is that for the capital
Operating.
operating expense?
Yeah, that's why it's
That's what all-
nerve wracking.
That's what,
Again,
Yeah,
in
capital.
terms of getting all of this information
That's
together
why
in one
Julie's
place,
going,
that's what I was afraid.
can I get a
the
copy
answer
of the
would be.
contract with
Okay.
Maine Water?
have it.
That's it?
That's it.
This is
You
it?
have it, that's it, yeah.
yeah,
You
that's
see
it.
my problems. And it's just and I can't I sound like a broken record. It's not what I'm accustomed to, and I understand that, and I try. It's just, and I've been told sometimes I have to slow down because I'm like a bull in a china shop. I get in the china shop and I have a
She
little
gets
attack.
excited, she gets excited.
I get excited
Yeah.
because I don't want to change things. I love Waldeboro as it is. I just want to change some of the paperwork that goes along with it.
Yeah,
That's
no
all.
doubt, no doubt.
And some things I want to change, but it's
But page
complicated.
5 says that we can redo this.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
fine.
not like we're locked into a 50-year contract.
Right.
redo
Understood,
this.
understood, but, good contracts, good scopes of services make for good contracts, and what I see here is,
And that's,
It's
I
a
think,
hand-
where
it's a
like we get
handshake.
into the whole like 3 contractors. I'm sure Hager would give us a better price than some of the other contractors
know,
they
and
might
that-
be using in Rockport and things like that. It
And
it
that
might
can be part of the.
right. We
You
could
know-
call up and get the guys that did the landing, who were Farley and Sons, to come and excavate, probably a lot cheaper. And I just want so when if we look at
understood,
it,
and there are different contracting mechanisms, you can set up a selection committee in town to select a contractor based on some price proposals, you can do that, I'm sure, under Maine law.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to take the low bid, you can adjust for quality,
The selectmen have often done that.
We have a
Not taking
purchasing
the low bid.
policy
yeah.
that
Yeah.
allows us to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can do that. Yeah,
Okay.
that can be rewritten.
so I'll get the capital for the water out, or Tanya will, and then you just have to task.
Does the Public Works Department have records, old fraying, drawings, town?
I'll ask John Daigle, and he doesn't keep records. We have them on the magic wall, and if they didn't make the magic wall,
I don't know what the magic wall is.
it's a ridiculous filing system that we have. Once Lee left, I'm just gonna say it, and I get hit about this a little. Whether in some people's mind Lee was great or not, the man's records were fabulous. What the records I find, I keep because they were fabulous.
Okay.
Since then, it just, there was too much turnover, and then a new broom sweeps clean, and nobody appreciates the history of went before. So, sometimes things get lost. So whatever I have, and we've kept.
If you would like, we can ask Lee if he has past records.
I've asked him.
Have you asked him?
He'll give them to us. Whatever we need, he will
Right.
give it to us. He has. I've
So-
been in his home. He
Right.
has a whole room dedicated just to Waldeboro.
Right, so you can get whatever he has.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Why don't we have what he has here?
Because you'd have to hire somebody full-time to make copies of it. It's extensive.
Because you have new broom sweep clean, and it just, they didn't, that was done, or that didn't matter.
I guess
or-
the question I'm asking is why
We
wouldn't you
could have
just
them
give
now.
them back to us?
Well, I think they were his.
Oh,
I
His
think
personal records?
His personal
personal
records.
records?
Right.
Okay.
He.
So that's why I say you'd have to
Yeah.
hire somebody to make
I'd like
copies,
to know
but
how he drew that line between personal.
No,
and
no, no.
town.
He didn't. He copied them.
copies.
Oh, all right.
Duplicate.
There's no town records at Lee's. Let me make that clear too.
Got
But
it. Okay.
but he was one of those so meticulous people that, that especially important things. I've relied on him several times for things that just because I need the history. I'm not afraid to call prior and ask. My issue is that when new managers come in, they take the files out of that were in their office and off they go, and they're shipped someplace and God knows where they are, or they get, what's that? That doesn't belong here, and it gets thrown away. And we need that institutional background sometimes.
But the really important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is the new capital improvement plan and what it's gonna cost. And as Abden says, can we phase it in so that we don't have a 28 to 33% increase in 1 year? Can we do a chunk and a chunk?
They did say they
and a
could
chunk?
phase that in.
They
And
can
I'm
work
sure
with
there's a
that,
way to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah. What was the urgent item, Abden, that they had to get done? Was it the computer?
Yes.
Yes.
Was the computer
SCADA.
system up there?
They were doing the
Control.
SCADA.
Yeah.
That makes
they
sense.
And
need-
that was,
had to
that
get
was
done right
only
away.
like $15,000, I think.
Yeah.
Right,
But
that's
they
not a
could
lot
do
of money.
that, but they could have broke that down into sections too. They could have like $5,000.
The next thing they said coming up was the disposal of the uranium catchers. The scrubbers.
That's probably an
Iron
issue
exchange.
all over Maine because of our granite. That's probably an issue statewide. So,
Actually, we're on what's called a pluton, and it's full of uranium. It's a geologic feature called a pluton. It's the Waldoboro pluton. Google it.
P-U-T-O-N.
Pluton.
P-O-N.
And again, why? When I sit on Sylvania and they start talking about these things, I'm just impressed. Should have paid more attention.
So I'm sure there's a way to do that.
No, they
just
know,
need
but that
money
would be,
to do
they were,
that.
they were preparing us, that's the next
Yeah,
major
the
expense.
cost of that.
The
yeah,
cost of that,
Expense.
Right.
That was like 40,000,
something like that.
Something.
Well, that's
$40,000.
surprising. It's gonna be a lot of money, I bet you.
yeah. But you
Well,
still
just
get
put it
another
down
what?
in
Because we've
Wisconsin.
been renewing them and not removing them and replacing them. And when we remove them, that's when the disposal of those things will be costly.
I
That's
think
what
we
they
still
said.
get another, what, 5 or 10 years on them?
5, I think.
So that's something we have to,
Yeah.
That's what.
No,
we-
it was Wright Pierce who did the,
that's right, they were the engineering.
Wright Pierce did the,
I've worked with him before.
the proposal in the capital plan. They did a very professional job. And that was kind of like the other thing. We did that last summer right after the meeting and I said, well, they were gonna go with another company and I said, no, you gotta RFP that. Our specs say you have to do a request for proposals for services. So we did that. We got the best price and it was also the best company to do it.
They've done a lot of work for the town of Waldeboro in
It's
the
almost
past.
a year ago, wasn't it?
It was a year ago.
Yeah, back in May.
We found a lot of people like that with doing other issues in Waldeboro. Do like the Shellfish Committee with stuff we've done there with FB Environmental. With that.
So in terms of a new contract with whomever, it would be possible to put in that there shall be an RFP process.
Right. And it might just be as simple as purchasing will comply with Town of Waldeboro purchasing policy. I mean, it's as simple as that, but it's just, they don't know that, you know, like this is, they're a private entity. They're not used to dealing with what I have to deal with. And our auditors aren't used to me either saying, hey, how come this needs to, and they're like, oh, Ron, the auditor was like, yeah, you're right. That is an issue. Fix it. Okay. You know, so it's just, we're fixing it as we find it. And Peg has been wonderful, our new finance director. She's absolutely wonderful. I don't want anybody to think that we're not on top of it, because we are.
When do these rate decisions need to be made?
We gotta go to the PUC. I think the Maine Water's
They're working on
petitioning
it.
the
Yeah.
PUC to do that on behalf of the town.
Because no matter what, we knew this wouldn't be resolved before we needed the rate increase.
Right.
So
they're
what is the
doing-
time frame for that then? Does that take typically 6 months, a
I think it
year?
was 3 months, wasn't it? They could fast track it
Yeah.
because it's town owned, so it wasn't.
Does it work so that they apply for the rate increase, but they can implement it
They're
over
due to
time
come back
if
the
they
first
choose
meeting in
to?
June with
Oh, they
all
are?
of this, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, June.
so that we can step it.
We're gonna step it.
Yeah. Yes.
Step it, and then the select board approves it.
And then it has to go
Whatever it is.
through the rate, through the PUC.
So will we see a rate increase this year, or will it be effective probably January 1st?
January 1st, I
Okay.
think.
So
Yeah,
there's
I think that's
time.
what they
Yeah.
wanted was, it would definitely be in place by January 1st.
That makes sense.
Yep. But yeah, it's been 13 years since there's been a rate increase.
What business ever does that, right? There's always something
Well,
you need
it's,
to fix.
but again, that's the
It's a good thing
problem
you
with
asked that
turnover.
question, Howard.
Well, I'll tell you what happened was, I had the opportunity with my new building is to actually have Taction come back. And I wanted to add a second floor to accommodate that. Well, Taction wanted sprinkler systems.
Not
Right,
Taction.
Huh?
so you,
Taction didn't want it.
Well, the no, that was one of their recommendations, is they had to have sprinkler systems. So I checked into it, it was 25,000 for the sprinkler system, then it was $20,000 to hook up a water line, designated. 20,000 to hook up a designated water line? I said, you're kidding me. And that's when I blew a head gasket on Julie. She says, what the frig is Maine Water doing? Why are they charging so?
Why
would
would
a business-
Maine Water be installing the water line? Can't you just
No,
go
that
out and
goes up to
hire
the
a
that goes-
contractor?
that's- But that's
Halt-
that's what they was charging. That's why the laundromat is not finished. The people got charged so much because they had budgeted, say $10,000 to hook up a water line. And it cost them 20 some odd thousand for that and the sprinkler
Hey,
system.
Let me get this
Okay.
clear. Is Maine Water denying a permit to do a hot tap to a water main? You can't go,
No.
You as a
that's a
private,
value permit.
you as a private entity can't hire Tony Lash or whoever.
I believe, they go
They,
out to
they will not
contract.
give you a permit to do a hot
No.
tap.
No, they do it. You
They're a
pay the bill.
contractor.
And that's what
We
I
have to
lost it.
renegotiate our contract with them.
And
That's-
they're
that's-
allowed to charge 10% over whatever the contractor does as their administrative
It was very
profit.
difficult, because we, in this contract, we agree to conform with their fee schedule and everything, and
And
That was part of
I was
it.
trying to get a company
We
to
need
come back.
to, we need to rewrite a new scope of services and
Right.
rebid it, even if Maine Water gets it. That's outrageous.
This can be
It
redone.
is.
That's
It was-
outrageous.
I was-
Anytime
I
you have a
was furious,
monopoly like
actually.
that, they
I
set the
was-
price, that's ridiculous.
You know, and a lot of people don't understand that until it happens to them. Like me, I didn't realize that, what else was going on in town. Why would a business come in here and spend $50,000 on a
That's
sprinkler
right.
system when it's gonna take them forever to make it back? It would be
Yeah.
take me 20 years to get recoup that money. I wasn't gonna spend the money. It's an extra $45,000 in expense that
Yeah.
the building cost me almost twice as much as it was supposed to start with, so.
Well,
So
let's
it's
get
it's
this
a good
taken
thing this
care
all
of.
came up,
This is
it's a, no, it is, it's,
something we
it's a
can
good
fix.
it's
Yeah.
good,
Yeah, this
It's
is
good.
fixable.
because things can be fixed.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And good
Julie
things
can
are
sleep at
happening.
night, and Bob can sleep at night.
And good things are happening. No, I mean, and I don't want anybody to think it's not. I mean,
Oh, no, it's-
I sit at these meetings and sometimes I get smacked for being such a Debbie Downer, and I am at times. I get it. But
She
there,
got smacked this morning a little bit. That's okay.
I smacked back.
You did. Boy, she hit back.
I hit back. You better make sure when you hit me, I stay down, because if I get back up, it's not pretty.
No,
It was
Well,
just,
it's a good thing that this has been revisited.
it's a wonderful thing.
Financially, in terms of scope of services, in terms of a plan. Yeah, this is important stuff.
It's very important stuff. And this is what is so hard, I think, for some other, and I said this morning, for other committees and things to understand, is that there's so much going on in this town and so many things that are the potential to happen and move this town forward, that, the priorities have to be here, and everybody has their little fiefdoms that they want. Oh, that should be a priority. So you need to drop everything and just do this. And I'm like, but you just don't understand how many balls are in the air and what is at stake here, because we are poised to do great things, like, actually things that will change the face of Waldoboro and help us, and I just wish everybody had that vision of, we can change the course of this town. We can fight poverty. We can fight drug addiction, and that will help the economic growth of this town and make it an amazing place. And people will want to come here. In 5 years, we will be the place to come, to start your business, to raise your family. And we just need things to fall into place.
And good water service is one of them.
And it is.
That's huge, believe it or not, that's huge.
yeah.
And like, people don't realize, we are also, one of the things I thought of is our power that we get for the water department is now on our solar farm. So, that's something we've saved money. Well, we broke even on. In 7 years, in 6 years, we might be saving more money, but like, there's something that we are green about, and things.
The landfill power array powers the pump station?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It's on the meter, it's on the town meter. It's one of
Right.
the town meters that
Right. It's town.
CMP reads.
If, for example, we were to be able to lower the power consumption at the power station, what happens to the excess power? Do we get paid for that?
It's banked,
It's
and we
banked.
get a credit for it.
Depends on what happens with the legislation.
Okay.
Yeah, that could change.
That
but
could change.
If it's a net metering thing, then it's banked kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour,
Okay.
and we use it later when we have demand.
Right. But I mean, we are an interesting place. So, but no, good things are happening. Good things are happening. But yeah, you're right. Water is a big thing. But affordability.
Without a doubt.
We had a community forum, and one of the things that came out of it was affordability. Affordability of this community and how we're progressing. And what we have to do with our lives.
Well, yeah, again, I'll say this about the Waldoboro Utility District, our finances are very good. There's no big rate increases on our horizon. If the bonds, what's the status of the bonds that we use to finance the facility? When do they mature?
10 years, I think. I'll have to look. I think it's 10 more years. I think they were
So-
This is one
25-year
of those
bonds.
That
things
pump
you
station
borrow.
has a,
Yeah.
yeah, that pump
Yeah.
station has a longer lifetime than 10 years.
Yes.
Got this
Carlton
going.
thinks he remembers they told us 50
Right.
plus.
No, and it's in good
Yeah.
shape. I mean, don't get me
So,
wrong, it's,
At least in terms of utilities, the town could be very, very.
well, also for,
Inexpensive.
for utilities, I just wanna say too, and give John Fancy, replacing John Fancy will be a difficult task. That man
He is
is fabulous,
very
and I just,
qualified.
because he has been, my first 2 weeks here, he made it a point to come, and I never saw anybody get so excited about showing me their sewer treatment facility. And I've had some, in my career,
I'll show you mine.
about 4 interesting sewer utility operators that just love to show me all their equipment. And he was like just thrilled to take me on a tour of that place. And he's like, now roll that window up because that water is going, being sprinkled. And it was a fun time.
So Mike, would you like to see the pump station? Because Julie can make that happen.
Well, I've walked the outside, and it's a very small building.
Yes, it
It's-
is.
it's
I can
probably
get you
just-
in.
Yeah. I would like
Without
to see
setting
it.
out alarms.
Now I can. John
Yeah, I
John
would-
John
I would
Daigle
like
will
to-
get
I
you
would-
in.
I would like
But
to
you
tour.
know, and there's a pond there, and it's nice, and
Alvin, would you like to go over and look at it too?
Yeah, I'd like to look at it.
I'm in. Be the
great. We'll
second time.
I'll make a field trip.
Let's do a field trip.
It's all good.
Bring some cheese and whatever.
At your house later.
Sure.
Karen's looking for people to come and visit you all the time.
Absolutely.
I kind of
Had
get the feeling
house
we're,
power washed this morning.
I kind of get the feeling we're setting little tasks for ourselves, sort of just talking with one another here. I'm wondering if we could sort of outline what they might be. For example, when we have our next meeting, what do we want to have accomplished?
Why don't we review the
meeting.
capital plan next meeting?
Okay?
That'll give everybody a chance to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll try to schedule something to go up to the well house.
So what about inviting Carlton to talk to us at that meeting too, just to get the
Yeah.
history rounded out and completed?
And I am
Carlton is with,
sure-
Johnson.
I
Maine
don't
Water?
want,
No, Carlton used to be chairman of the select board, and he's been in town.
Oh, okay.
And he was with Delia on the board.
He's been in town forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was driving by on Dutch Neck and he saw me doing a hike somewhere.
Are
He
you
just
adjourning?
stopped and he grabbed me. He said, I was thinking of you 15 seconds ago when he heard about the water committee.
are you adjourning?
He was very
Bob?
pleased I called him last night.
I'm sorry?
Are you adjourning?
It's up to Mike.
Will you hear a
You're
motion
chairman.
to
Are
adjourn?
we adjourned?
I'll take motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?